Right, we now come to the urgent question. Show Secretary of State Helen Whately.
To ask the Secretary of State for Work and Pensions when she plans to respond to the Social Security Advisory Committee's letter published on the 17th of October.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We welcome the letter from the Chair of the Social Security Advisory Committee. We were hoping to respond to the letter on the day of the budget, but regrettably there has been an unexpected further delay, and we are due to issue the response this week. However, my officials met with the committee in August to discuss the regulations prior to the committee's formal scrutiny in early September. Mr. Speaker, I want to explain briefly why it's important to invoke the urgency procedure in this case. We needed to make the necessary exchequer savings in the current financial year, as the regulations needed to come into force on the 16th of September. The previous government left us a £22 billion black hole, with Treasury reserves spent 3 times over. The day-to-day spending set out by the previous government in their spring budget was not even close to reality, the departmental spending. It is now up to us to clear up the mess of the previous government, so we had to take some difficult decisions, such as means testing the winter fuel payment. But we remain determined to do everything possible, Mr. Speaker, to support the poorest pensioners. We've taken immediate action to increase the take-up of pension credit, working with charities, local authorities, and through a campaign on print and broadcast media. The government has written to over 12 million pensioners about the changes to means testing the winter fuel payment. We've also written to 120,000 pensioners on housing benefit who could be entitled to pension credit to encourage them to claim. We've extended the Household Support Fund until March 2026. Thanks to our steadfast commitment to the triple lock, over 12 million pensioners will see their state pension rise by up to £470 next year and up to £1,900 over the course of this Parliament. The Warm Homes discount, which you heard about a minute ago, is worth £150 off energy bills for low-income households. The Warm Homes plan, in the longer term, will insulate 5 million more homes. And by taking these difficult decisions, Mr. Speaker, we were able to provide a cash injection of £22.6 billion in the NHS budget, the largest real terms growth in day-to-day NHS spending outside of COVID since 2010, and this will bring down waiting times for people across the country, including many pensioners. Mr. Speaker, we are taking the responsible and difficult decisions to clear up the mess of the previous government and fix the foundations of our economy and rebuild our public services.
So, Secretary of State Helen Whately.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for granting this urgent question. This government made a choice to take away the winter fuel payment from 10 million pensioners this winter and to rely on the notoriously underclaimed pension credit as a system of means testing us. This choice will make life harder for pensioners across the country. It will see 750,000 of the poorest pensioners miss out on much-needed help with the cost of heating, and according to the party opposite's own research, could lead to 4,000 additional deaths this winter. The government knows this. That's why they haven't done an impact assessment, and perhaps that's why, after 7 weeks, they still haven't responded to the concerns of their own advisory committee. That committee wrote the Secretary of State a letter containing their concerns about how this policy will affect the poorest people. Their letter said that 70% of disabled pensioners will miss out on their payment this winter. They suggested expanding the eligibility of winter fuel payment beyond pension credit because they know that the government's savings are based on a third of the poorest pensioners missing out. And, in direct contrast to the government, they said a more detailed review was required urgently. Like we, colleagues across this House, including on their own benches, charities and pensioner groups across the country have said. Yet here we are, 7 weeks later, and the Secretary of State has yet to even respond to them. In fact, she isn't even here to answer this question. So I ask the Honourable Lady, will they now, after 7 weeks, respond to their own advisory committee? Will they now, after 7 weeks, publish a full impact assessment for everyone to see? Does she accept that her government has got this wrong? Does she recognise that they have negligently underestimated how many people will fall through the cracks? I suspect that deep down, she is worried, as I am, about pensioners who can't afford to eat their homes. I'm sure her Secretary of State has been lobbying the Chancellor behind the scenes, Perhaps right now that's where she is instead of being here. But I say to the Honourable Lady, will she go back to her Chancellor one more time and try and make her think again?
Sir Reynolds.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I do apologise for the delay in responding to the committee's letter. It is regrettable. The initial delay, as I set out, was because we were waiting for the OBR to come forward with their costings of the policy. And then there was another unexpected delay, and there has been a delay, and I don't know why I'm being heckled, but I'm trying to calmly explain why there's been a delay, and I do apologise for the delay. We will be issuing a response, if that's the question that the Honourable Gentleman was asking, very shortly, and certainly by the end of this week. It is important that we respond to that letter. I respect that the Honourable Lady is asking that question. With regard to the public sector equality duty, we have done everything in line with the duty, which is to provide an equality analysis of the decision that we have taken, which honourable members will know was published in December. However, I will say this gently, Mr. Speaker. We found ourselves in a situation after the election of having a 22 billion black hole with Treasury reserves spent 3 times over. The OBR has said that their assessment of the previous government's budget would have been materially different had they known the pressures on spending and the real situation in the Treasury. So I note that the Honourable Lady does not come with an apology, but we've had to do this. We didn't want to take the decision to means test winter fuel payments, but we've had to do this to take some difficult decisions in order to clear up the mess, to tackle a fiscal inheritage and start rebuilding our public services, which pensioners across the country and many, many others rely on.
Richard Burgon.
Mr. Speaker, and obviously none of us on this side will take with anything other than a mountain of salt the kind of protestations about poverty from the party opposite, but the government spends £1,300 billion per year. The cut to winter fuel allowance saves the government around £1.4 billion per year. So this cut to the winter fuel allowance saves around 0.1% of government spending, 0.1% of government spending. So on that basis, and when you look at all the welcome advances made in the Labour budget, all the great stuff that we can talk about, I'd really urge the Minister, when he consider that this only saves 0.1% of government spending, to think again on this particular issue. And I do think the public will welcome that as a sign of real leadership, that not anyone and not any government always gets it right. On this occasion, I do believe we got it wrong. So could the government rethink on this issue?
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'm proud of the last Labour government's record of lifting over 1 million pensioners out of poverty. We do expect to make savings of around £1.4 billion in this year because of means testing the winter fuel payment. That is not an insignificant proportion of the £5.5 billion of savings that the Chancellor set out on the 29th of July.
We come to Liberal Democrat spokesperson Steve Darling.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And many of us in this chamber accept that the new government inherited a financial mess from the old government. It is a pity that this has been balanced on the backs of pensioners. The Minister quite rightly highlighted how many of us are doing, as I am in Torbay, championing our residents to claim for pension credit. She talked of unexpected delays. Many of us, including our own department, have unexpected delays. In light of this, will she extend the deadline beyond the 21st of December as to when pensioners can claim this allowance?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the Honourable Gentleman for that question. I'm afraid I can't commit to extending the deadline. It's important that we encourage as many pensioners as possible. I know that he is working in his own constituency. I did a pension credit surgery in my constituency last week, and we've got 160 local authorities up and down the country, helping us to ensure that those in need and those on the lowest incomes are checking whether they are eligible for pension credit. That's the right thing to do. What I will say to the honourable gentleman is that those claims can be backdated by 3 months, and anyone who is eligible for a pension credit within the qualifying week will also be passported to other benefits such as the winter fuel payment.
Thank
you, Mr. Speaker. The Advisory Committee made several recommendations, particularly relating to getting assistance to those people who should be in receipt of pension credit. Can the Minister indicate whether the Government is intending to accept those recommendations?
Well, what we are doing is redeploying an additional 500 staff to deal with the substantial increase, over 150% increase in the claims that are coming in, Mr. Speaker, and that is the right thing to do. It is an operational focus for the department to get through those claims as quickly as possible so that we can make sure that we get the help to those most in need.
Mr. Griffiths.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Social Security Advisory Committee estimated that over 70% of people with a disability will lose their winter fuel payment this year. Does the Honourable Lady really think that cutting benefits from this vulnerable group of pensioners is the right thing to do?
I thank the Honourable Lady for that question. If she looks at the equality analysis of this policy, she will see that those with a disability will be disproportionately likely to retain the winter fuel payment, and I urge her to have a look at the equality analysis.
Andy MacDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank my honourable friend for his statement. We had a budget that did so much good for our country in the face of the most dreadful inheritance, and the Labour front bench should be congratulated for that. But pensioners in Middlesbrough and Thornaby East are still looking to the government for yet further mitigations around the impact of the winter fuel payment. Much has been done by the elected Mayor Chris Cook to embrace those issues around the Household Support Fund and so on. But the Social Security Advisory Committee noted that the 1.5 billion savings, or 1.4, is based on an increase of only 5% in pension credit take-up from 63 to 68%. So can the Minister say what the increase in take-up has been to date and what further steps she will take to provide yet further mitigation and reduce pensioner poverty?
Thank you. We will be announcing new statistics in the coming weeks at the end of this month. The savings he asked about, and the committee did ask this question about the 5% increases. This is the assumption of 5% is based on actually the previous government taking away free TV licences and then people having to apply. And so it's based on what happened then, and the OBR accepted our assumption.
Sir Christopher Cho.
Mr. Speaker, what is the point of having a Social Security Advisory Committee if the government doesn't listen to its advice and take its advice? Would it not be better to abolish the Social Security Advisory Committee if the government is intent on ignoring it?
No.
Lord Scott Arthur.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I was reassured by the Minister's statement that we'll soon see that a reply to that letter. But my constituents in Edinburgh South West are not fools. They can see that whilst opposition parties oppose the cut, they're not proposing how they would fund it. And they're also not fools in that they see how desperate the situation is with pension credit in terms of the lack of people claiming it. And I want to put on record my thanks to Age Scotland for the guidance they've given my staff in my office on how to ensure more people in my constituency do claim it. The letter, Mr. Speaker, refers to winter fuel payment claimants in England, Wales, the EU, Switzerland, Iceland, Liechtenstein and Norway, but not Scotland. Is this because in Scotland the Scottish Government has the power to both maintain the winter fuel payment and fully fund it?
Yes, as I understand it, that is in the Scottish Government's gift.
David Hines.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I wonder if the Minister has had a chance to visit the DWP library and if she has made a note of how many drives there have been over the years to take up pension credit, and if that rate has ever reached as high even as 3/4 of those who should be eligible.
What I will say to the honourable gentleman is that the previous government promised to merge housing benefit with pension credit, which would be a significant advance in ensuring improvements. They promised that 13 years ago, but we are introducing that in January. We have only been in power for 6 months, so we'll have done more in 6 months than the previous government did in 14.
Kirsty Blackman.
Mr. Speaker, many pensioners are terrified about going into debt, and they therefore don't want to switch on their heating in case they end up in a situation with massive bills. As temperatures drop below freezing in Scotland at the beginning of next week, will the Minister apologise to those pensioners across Scotland who will not be able to put the heating on because they fear going into debt?
I urge the Honourable Lady to look at the support available to low-income households through the Warm Homes Discount Scheme, the extension of the Household Support Fund, our commitment to the triple lock, which will see over 12 million pensioners see a rise in their pension by up to £470 next year, and over the course of this Parliament, £1,900. Also in the longer term, I urge you to look at the detail of the Warm Homes Plan, which will transform homes across the country by making them cleaner and cheaper to heat.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On the 19th of September, a written question from the Minister's Department told me that 48,351 people in my constituency of Rotland and Stamford had been eligible for winter fuel payments. Now, whilst we are proud to offer forever homes to so many pensioners, that is a preposterous figure. It is a preposterous figure for a heartless and unnecessary decision that will cost more in the long term. So how do I or any of my residents have confidence in what the government is doing if they believe that over half my constituency is made up of pensioners and can't even get the basic numbers right?
Quote a fellow politician to her, I have people in my constituency telling me that they don't need the winter fuel payments that we give them because they can afford it. Those are the words of the Right Honourable Lady, Leader of the Opposition.
Anne Davies.
Thank you, Mr. Llefarydd. The Social Security Advisory Committee's letter calls for an urgent amendment to allow those in receipt of pensioner housing benefit to receive the winter fuel payment this year. I believe the UK Government should go further, extending eligibility to people on council tax support, attendance allowance, disability living allowance, PIP and carers allowance. Will the UK Government rethink its position on eligibility and reduce pensioner hardship this winter?
I thank the Honourable Lady for that question. It allows me to focus on ensuring that communications around this isn't just about pension credit. This is also about people on working tax credit and child tax credit and other benefits. When there was a concern by the committee about pensioners in receipt of child tax credits, pensioners who are in receipt of other benefits should also check whether they are eligible for pension credit, because it is quite a complicated system. It's not just whether you're already on pension credit.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The government says it wants everyone eligible for pension credit to claim it and get it. But as the Social Security Advisory Committee points out, they're expecting only a 5% increase in uptake of people. And isn't the reality the government needs hundreds of thousands of pensioners to not claim this entitlement which they deserve in order to make their figures add up and to cut £1.4 billion from winter fuel payments?
I would be very pleased if all pensioners who are eligible for pension credit applied and received the help that they deserve.
Ibn Mohammed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Minister will be aware that billions of pounds in benefits and financial help, including pension credit, goes unclaimed every year due to the stigma associated with claiming benefits and the huge difficulty claimants encounter navigating the system. Can the Minister tell the House what measures the government is taking to encourage greater take-up and simplify the benefit system?
We have run a number of campaigns. The latest campaign launched recently on radio, TV and print media to urge those who may be eligible to apply, and also to urge loved ones of those who might be eligible to encourage their loved ones to apply and help them to do so. We've also asked officials to see how we can improve the form to make it easier. But I will say to the honourable gentleman, over 90% of claims are now made online, and pensioners out there can get help either from a loved one to do so online, or indeed by charities who are helping us and local authorities to ensure that they get the support that they deserve.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. 16,600 pensioners in Broxbourne will lose their winter fuel payment. How is the Minister helping those who can't do online applications for pension credit make an application, and will she commit to continue writing to all those who are going to lose their winter fuel until they sign up for pension credit?
We have written to all pensioners to tell them about the change in government policy to ensure that those who are not in receipt of pension credit or other benefits know that they won't be getting the winter fuel payment this winter.
Jim Shannon. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Minister, it's always good to have the answers that are necessary. The report notes that some 1.5 billion of savings. The pension credit taken from 63 to 68% represents an additional 100,000 households. Any take-up would negate savings made by government. But the fact is that pensioners who would qualify have lost out this year and are struggling now. Minister, what can be done to expedite their applications and the long waiting list for decisions, which could mean for many the potential for additional income to ease and help in the winter months will be too little too late? The reason why I make the point quite clearly, Mr. Speaker, is because those people who are in the system and the system is taking too long to make the decision, and because of that they need the money right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As I said previously, we have redeployed an additional 500 members of staff to process the applications for pension credit, and we are mostly hitting the target for processing times.
That completes the urgent question. We'll let the front benches change over.